With The Walking Dead releasing multiple spin-offs after the main series is over, the question remains, what kind of legacy did and will The Walking Dead leave behind? On Halloween Day in 2010, the world would be introduced to Rick Grimes, this time in TV format rather than his comic counterpart. The first season of the show would average around a cool 5 million viewers per episode. The journey of Rick Grimes would grab so many people's attention, and everyone loved watching this group of fairly ordinary and random people just trying to make it by in a completely ruined world. Viewership didn't slow down at all when it came to season 2 either, growing by over 30%. If you take a look at the Walking Dead subreddit, all the way back in 2011, at the very beginning of season 2, it only had around 6,000 members. And this was a subreddit for the comics as well, not just the TV show. But by the end, it was at a staggering 26,000 members. That just goes to show how fast this series was growing. There was already a huge community building, and it was only in its second season, far from its eventual prime. As more seasons of the show went by, it was clear that AMC had something extraordinary on its hands. Season 5 of the show was considered to be the best by many, and by this point, The Walking Dead was at a 10 million viewers per episode mark, breaking all kinds of records and making it one of the most popular shows on television. A quick check of the Walking Dead subreddit would show it had shot up to around 230,000 members right before season 6 aired, an incredible number for a TV show subreddit at the time. Season 6 saw pretty much the same in viewership as season 5. But this is when The Walking Dead would eventually change forever, and not exactly for the better. All because of an over-charismatic and clever bat-wielding murderer named Negan. After he was introduced, The Walking Dead saw drops in their ratings, not because of Negan's character directly, but because of what he was doing to this poor group. To be fair, they kinda started it, but that's not the point. Throughout The Walking Dead up to this point, the group was a beacon of hope and resilience, eventually overcoming every obstacle they had faced with not too much loss. Negan was an absolute exception. He brutally murdered 2 fan-favorite characters and laughed and made fun of them while doing it. Some Walking Dead fans, believe it or not, were outraged and called out the show for the brutal and disgusting and over-the-top violence of this scene. The truth is that it wasn't exactly the violence that did it, it was who died and how sudden it happened. The show's seen similar violence before. For example, when Rick brutally ripped out a man's throat with his teeth to protect Carl. Very different situation, yes, and obviously that man deserved it when Glenn and Abraham didn't, but regardless, similar level of violence. It was more the principle of seeing good men like Glenn and Abraham be put down like dogs in front of people they considered family at that point. It wasn't a massively rapid decline in ratings, but the decline was definitely happening as people saw the group really having trouble coming back from this. By the time season 8 rolled around, it wasn't looking too hot for The Walking Dead. This, rating-wise, by far was its worst season. Yes, the characters in the show were starting to make a push against Negan, but by that point, it was just too late for some viewers. And by the time the finale of season 8 premiered, it was seeing the lowest numbers since the very first season of the show. Talk about a fall from grace, and this is why so many people consider season 8 to be the absolute worst season of the show. Despite the epic comeback story of Rick finally getting to Negan, people at that point were calling it repetitive or just plain boring, and it doesn't help that you kill one of the most important characters in the show in that same season, especially a character that played such a vital role in the ending of the comics. Sometimes you wonder to this day what AMC was thinking when they killed Carl Grimes. Yes, there's plenty of different stories that float around that AMC didn't want to pay him or he just wanted a break from the show. I don't know if one has been absolutely confirmed, but that's besides the point. Unfortunately, The Walking Dead would never recover from the season 7 to season 8 droughts. Season 9 would have some of the best reviews and ratings since the glory days of the show, but it didn't matter. The viewership continued to stay low and drop even further. Rick Grimes leaving in season 9 definitely contributed to many people dropping the show, and I can personally account to knowing many people that stopped watching after Rick left. They stayed through Carl, they stayed through Negan's beatdowns, but Rick leaving was the final straw for a lot of people. Many did love season 9 though, on account of one of the most interesting antagonist groups ever seen in the show, the Whisperers. The Walkers had always been this obstacle faced by every group, whether it was the protagonist group or the antagonists. It was just this ever-looming presence that could get literally anyone. They're not biased, they go after anything living. But finally, it was just a threat for the main group as other people figured out how to weaponize it. Moving on to season 10 and 11, they were met with subpar reviews, but the viewership didn't change by this point. Let's be real, if you're still watching by season 10 or 11 of a show, you're gonna finish it out. The Commonwealth thing was just okay for many, not really loved or hated, and the finale of the show had generally positive ratings by most of the community, and even those who returned to watch the finale after years of not watching the show, because that was a big group of people. This was largely due to the return of Rick Grimes at the very end and getting to catch up with him just a little bit. With the end of the main show, it set up 2 out of the 3 spin-offs, being the Rick and Michonne spin-off and the Daryl Dixon spin-off. The third one was a bit spontaneous and not really set up in the main show. It kind of just happened, and it's its own thing. At this point in time when I'm making this video, only the Negan and Maggie spinoff has been released, and they're only on episode 3. But after looking at all this, the question still lingers. What will The Walking Dead be known as after it is all said and done? When all of the spinoffs are finished and the show is just done. The brand is done. The legacy of the main show, in many people's eyes, will be that one show that was strong, fascinating, and could evoke such strong emotions out of people, until it lost its charm and slowly died out, dragging out unnecessarily until finishing on a pretty hopeful note and setting up the continuation of the universe. To me, The Walking Dead was a show with a whole world of potential to explore. A show that wasn't afraid to do things and show how gritty and brutal the apocalyptic world can really be. These spin-offs continuing the Walking Dead universe also have a chance to do something special. Fear of the Walking Dead is disliked by many and overall has poor reviews compared to its main show counterpart. I'm gonna kinda glide past Fear of the Walking Dead because I haven't personally seen all of it, so it's tough for me to discuss it. Although after looking at the general consensus online and many people's thoughts on it, it seems to be that a lot of people put it down. There's also other spin-offs like World Beyond and Tales of the Walking Dead, and to be completely honest with you, World Beyond was terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong, it had some alright moments, but overall, I mean, I was only watching to hear Jadis talk about Rick, and that was maybe a 1.5-minute long scene. Tales of the Walking Dead is a pretty cool idea, but some of the episodes were really questionable and did not fit the theme of The Walking Dead. I will say though, Tales of the Walking Dead definitely has some potential. Still though, The Walking Dead universe may be far from over if they can figure out a way to sort of refresh the show. It all lies in the hands of these new spin-offs. If they end up being terrible, The Walking Dead will go out with more of a whimper than anything. If they end up being great, maybe they continue their expansion further with more spin-offs, or just extend these spin-offs farther. The Maggie and Negan spin-off has been great so far, but I have my doubts as far as how far they can push this show. I don't think they can make it nearly as long tenured as the main show or Fear of the Walking Dead. There's only so much you can do exploring a place like New York City. Yes, they could move on to other big cities and kind of explore them, but that would get very old very fast. The Daryl Dixon spin-off, on the other hand, looks very promising, and I think this show can either make or break what people think of when they think of The Walking Dead. As of right now, the general consensus of The Walking Dead is really mixed, but Daryl Dixon is such a beloved character by every Walking Dead fan, and seeing this treacherous journey through the unexplored territory of an entirely different continent could be the refreshing thing that The Walking Dead desperately needs. I'm not going to speak on the Rick Grimes spinoff because we know it's only going to be one season, unfortunately. I think that show could be fantastic if they pushed it longer than that. Maybe they could make Rick somehow appear in the Daryl Dixon spinoff. That would be the most amazing way to tie things together and definitely get former fans of the show to at least check out the spinoff. One huge problem that I have recognized with The Walking Dead though are these damn time skips. Haven't seen Fear of the Walking Dead, but I know what's going on over there too. Look, there's nothing wrong with skipping some time for the sake of telling the story that you have to tell. But it gets to a point where it's hard to keep track of and it gets a little ridiculous. The Maggie and Negan spinoff takes place years after The Walking Dead ends. Negan says in this spinoff that the Saviors were a thing 12 to 15 years ago, and the Savior War was around 2 years into the apocalypse. Obviously, after the Savior War, season 9 has a year or so time jump where we see Negan in prison. Then, after Rick goes away, there's the huge 6-year time jump. Then, there's another time jump at the end of The Walking Dead for about a year. And I'm not even counting the 5 or 6 month time jumps that are probably somewhere in season 10 and 11. They're bound to fuck up this timeline at some point because there's just way too much jumping around going on. Really, it's the Negan and Maggie spinoff. I think the best way to resolve this is to make the Daryl Dixon spinoff happen at the same time as the Maggie and Negan one. But as far as the Rick Grimes spinoff goes, I don't know what you're gonna do for that. I'm glad I'm not a writer for this show because you have to dive deep to make sure you get all this shit right. It's just a huge issue that The Walking Dead Dead has to watch out for, and they gotta be super careful to get this shit accurate, because someone's gonna pick it apart if they don't. At the end of the day, I could sit here and criticize things about The Walking Dead, but the legacy the show has will forever live on, especially in any type of zombie media. And I think Walking Dead is one of the perfect shows to show how attached people can get to fictional characters, which is a good thing. I mean, that's how you know they're doing a good job. And it shows that for any story, you have the whole world to explore. You can venture out to completely new areas of a universe that you spent years building. Unfortunately, it also shows how a TV show can have a huge fall from grace, especially after practically owning TV viewership for 3 or 4 years. Regardless, The Walking Dead will always be one of my favorite shows of all time. And it's gonna be a while before we see something as special as The Walking Dead was in its prime on TV ever again. Just wanted to talk a bit about the future of The Walking Dead for y'all. Bit of an aimless video, but I hope y'all enjoyed regardless. This is Lucas, signing out. Y'all have a blessed day.